Hey everybody, Rob here. It's time for a few new ProRevenge stories. First one, don't fire the guy who holds the patents. Let's jump right in. Thank you for subscribing, and if you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button for more daily Reddit stories. This is not my story. I was present for it, sure, but I did not see all of it personally. Rather, this is my father's story. So, for some context, my father had a degree in mechanical engineering, either a master's or a doctorate. It had taken him years to get, and he was very proud of that. Thanks to his training, he had found his way working for many well-known companies, working primarily with the procedures used to make various things. Over time, he'd privately began working on an idea that would revolutionize how school and gym lockers worked. See, my father realized that there was a problem with those type of metal lockers. Namely, it was very easy for a person to break into them. What's more, as the lockers were designed, there were multiple exposed moving parts, which meant that if a student put too many books in one, or really anything got against a door, the locker could be jammed shut, making it near on impossible to open. So, for several years, Dad toyed with a number of ideas before hitting on a new design which would solve all those problems. The inner workings of the locker's locking mechanism would be contained within the door in such a way that 1. It was impossible for someone to shim or break into, 2. The entire mechanism would be enclosed, and 3. It was relatively maintenance-free. Now, at this point, my father was the vice president of manufacturing, and apparently there wasn't a clause in his contract that said that if he designed anything while working for the company, then he had to turn that over to them for profit. Dad still approached the company, offering them the design, but they weren't interested. Dad sat on the design for a while before eventually just taking out several patents on them and then forgetting about them. About 6 months after his first attempt at getting the company interested, the parent company's owner and chairman of the board passed away, and the board opted to sell off some of the holdings. The company my dad worked for was part of that. The new owners were young guys who seemed to think they knew everything, as young business owners always seem to think, and they set about changing 99% of the way things were being done. At some point, they stumbled across the plans my father had designed. Now, that's where things turned curious. They really wanted to start producing this new design, but as they didn't have all the plans and processes laid out for them, they had to turn to my father for answers. Rather than asking him how to do it or licensing the patents, as any reputable company would have done, they ordered him to turn over all his work, or else they would fire him. Dad stood his ground and refused. The new owners and my father went back and forth, arguing over details for several weeks, before finally, the new owners fired my father for insubordination. So, on to the revenge. There may be more to this, but I'm not entirely sure if it is just pro-revenge. It could border on nuclear based on what happened some years later, though I'm not certain that what happened had anything to do with my father's actions. So, after cleaning out his office and packing things in the trunk of his car, my father headed home and made a few phone calls. He must have gone through 8 or 9 different calls before he got in touch with someone who was interested in what he had to say. See, my dad was under no illusions that the company that had fired him wasn't going to just make those patented lockers on their own. He also knew that though the company itself was relatively small, the owners had money, and there was no way he could fight them. However, a larger company could. So, he contacted the major competitors and made them an offer. He eventually set up a meeting with some people, wheeled out the prototype he'd made, explained how everything worked, and noted that with this system, the company could revolutionize the way lockers were both designed and improve both safety and security. What's more, as he was the only patent holder for the next 7 years or so, that company could be the only company to produce them. The competitor jumped at the chance and bought all patents both for the design and the process. They even paid my dad a substantial consultancy fee to go out to their manufacturing site and teach their crews how to make the needed tool and die sets to produce them. Less than 6 months after the first company had fired him, their number one competitor was completely destroying them in the market with this new design, and there wasn't a damn thing the first company could do about it. They did try suing my father, claiming he had stolen their intellectual property, but that case quickly evaporated when they had to admit, under oath, that they'd never actually signed a contract with him, and there was no requirement that he turn over anything he created to the company. In the 7 years from when the second company bought the locker design and process patents, they pretty handily moved into markets that previously they'd been unable to. The first company soldiered on, but by the time the patent had finally expired, they were a shadow of their former selves. The new owners had sold the company at a loss, with the competitor buying it only to shut that production facility down due to redundancy. Put maybe 200 people out of work, though given how they'd lost so much business, I wager that it was far less than that. So yeah, the new guys don't want to play ball, threaten the guy that holds the patents on something they want to do, and then fire him, only to have him take everything to their competitor and effectively put them out of business. This is completely the first company's fault for not having something in their contract that bound anything created there to them and not to the person that created it. Congrats to OP's dad for realizing this and capitalizing on it. On to our next story. Don't scam a bot developer. Let's jump right in. I develop bots for people on Discord, a chat platform for those who somehow don't know. One day, I checked for hiring in a developer server and saw a job making a simple bot for a cafe group. I messaged the owner and got the job. I coded the bot the next day and waited for a response from the owner. It turns out that the owner was taking a break from Discord, so about a week later, when she was finally back, she DM'd me and I fixed the final bug and showed them the bot. Right away, they said, "Thank you for the bot, have a great day," took away my admin role in the server and blocked me. However, it didn't occur to her that I might be able to give myself admin with the bot. I immediately set the permissions that everyone gets on join to administrator. I am an admin in a bigger Discord server with about 300 members. I mentioned everyone and told them to join this server, and of course, they notice they have admin. Within 10 minutes, the server is completely destroyed. I haven't seen their reaction since I left the server, but I bet they will never scam anyone ever again. This is another clear-cut case of messing with somebody who is clearly smarter than you, something you definitely shouldn't do. On to our last story. Roommates don't respect my boundaries. I get them evicted in less than a day. Let's jump right in. I don't know if this is pro. It is certainly more than petty. Also, I apologize for any formatting. I'm on mobile and my first time posting any sort of longer story. Also, sorry for the long post. Background is pretty important. My freshman year of college, I went through a long process with my school to be able to live off campus as a freshman. Normally, this is not allowed, but they made an exception due to circumstances. I moved in on a lease takeover as a girl to an all-boy apartment. It was a 4-bedroom apartment that individually leased each room, but 2 rooms shared 1 bath and all shared a kitchen, living room, and laundry room. This place was gross when I moved in, but I cleaned it up and got it livable enough. I grew up with brothers and had no problem with dudes as long as they were decently respectful. Plus, I had the kitchen to myself. I'm also an engineering student and asked them if they had their friends over to let me know beforehand or keep the music below bed rattling. Turns out, this exact apartment was known as the party apartment, and I would soon find out why. I was working 8 to 12-hour shifts at retail and then going to school full-time. I come home at 11 p.m. exhausted to blasting music and so many people they are streaming out the front door. I was pissed. Luckily, each room locks with a deadbolt, and I remembered to lock mine before I left for work. There were easily 50 people there. As a 20-year-old who just wanted to sleep, I did the only rational thing I could do. I packed an overnight bag, locked my room, and called a friend with an SOS and slept there. I find out later that one of my roommates was dealing. Only 3 people were of legal drinking age, and 1 girl was 14. The girlfriend of one of my roommates was still in high school and invited all of her friends, who invited more people. The cops busted the party, but luckily didn't card anyone, so no one was arrested. Now, I felt like I could still reasonably deal with this. Then they started to use my things in the kitchen, steal my food, and the last straw was when they dented my kitchen knives that I had just purchased. Brand new knives that now had nicks in the blade, like they sword fought with them. Mind you, I communicated all of my grievances that weren't super minor, like using my laundry soap with them, and asked that my boundaries be respected. Their guests would throw up and poop in the toilet. They would try to enter my room to use my bed while I was sleeping. The girlfriend of one even ended up coming into my room to stare at me. I woke up when I forgot to lock my door to tell me 4 people were coming over. My food and my items were still being taken and damaged, and I grew tired of it all. I attempted to befriend the various roommates in an effort to get them to be more courteous, but the information I got was even better. Remember how I was a lease takeover? Yeah, our apartment not only required the necessary paperwork, they also required a lease takeover fee. I find out that my roommates are friends of the people on the lease. Their friends upgraded to a different apartment complex and didn't want to pay that fee. My roommates hadn't paid the takeover fee or signed any paperwork putting them on the lease. So, the original leaseholder wasn't living there. I keep this information for later. A few weeks pass and the parties are smaller but still happening. Then, one day, I am discussing painting my room due to the marks on the walls from the previous tenants. Our apartment allowed you to paint if it was 1. Approved first, or 2. You painted it back before move out. The maintenance guys were super sweet and let me pick a custom color for my room, a pretty light sky blue, bought it for me, and helped me paint my room. My roommates find out I painted and ask about it, not knowing what would happen later. They didn't paint their room, they spray painted it. Not with any vulgar or even gang symbols, but spray painted it. The parties continued, but now they let their guests sign the walls in various Sharpies. This was the moment I realized was the time. I ended up taking pictures of the room on Snapchat and saved them to my camera roll. I knew that my apartment complex wouldn't do anything about the parties and could even blame me for the underage kids. Plus, the items I stored in the common areas were fair game, according to legal terms about a shared space. I first speak with the building manager about the parties. I was right, there isn't anything I can do but call the cops. I can complain all I want about the condition of the house my roommates caused and the theft and damage of my belongings, and they won't do anything. They didn't even seem bothered when I spoke to them about 2 out of 4 of us living there not being on the lease. The other one that was on my side was chill and I didn't have a problem with. As long as rent was paid on time, it seemed they weren't going to do anything. After all this, I pull out my camera roll and tell this nice lady to scroll as long as she wants, as I took about 15 pictures on just the one room. She gets mad and starts babbling on and on about gang graffiti, and she won't have it. I knew there were no gang symbols whatsoever on the walls, just dumb kids, but it didn't look good. I didn't correct her and reminded her that the rooms in question were the ones where they weren't even legal tenants here. I locked as much as I could remember to grab of my things from the kitchen in my bedroom beforehand and was headed straight to work, so I didn't get to see the devastation as 2 office workers evict them in hours. They weren't the legal tenants and had clearly stayed over the 7-day guest limit. They had to pack up as much as they could and were out by the time I got home from my shift 10 hours later. I got a hateful and threatening message from the girlfriend of one of them. I don't remember the exact words as this was a few years ago, 2016, and I didn't save it for more than a year. I did save them once she started threatening me with stalking and physical harm. I stayed polite and neutral in my responses in case I would need to take them to court. They did get one small revenge in that I remembered to lock up my pots, but in my hurry I forgot the lids. They stole the lids to all cookware, even my crock pot. They also took all my food they could grab and put it in the now topless crockpot with all of my spices too and left it on. I'm not sure what liquid was used and I don't ever want to know, but I ended up paying the rent of a 1-bedroom for 4 bedrooms when the last roommate's lease ended a few months later. The rooms were leased individually. Also, the now former roommate's friends that were on the lease had to come clean and repaint the walls white. Do you know what happens when you put water-based white paint over red and black colored permanent marker? He eventually hired a guy to make it look right. I heard it took 9+ layers in some areas, and others were entirely spackled. That's not right, but it was a special paint that wouldn't let the ink from the marker bleed through over and was super thick. I felt bad for the original leaseholders as they were now stuck with the damages, had to repaint, and still had to pay rent on this apartment. I had met with and was cool with them, even tried helping one guy paint a bunch and told him I had no beef with him. I apologized the way things worked out and he wasn't happy with me, but also didn't blame me. I reasoned it with, they knew they were breaking the terms of their lease and exactly who their friends were when they didn't transfer the lease. If they hadn't repainted the room the way they did, the complex manager wouldn't have done anything. A little trick to anybody who has to get permanent marker off of something, use acetone, but don't use it on plastic because it'll dissolve it. Had OP's illegitimate roommates known this, there wouldn't have been any kind of problem here. I'd like to thank all the OPs for posting their stories to the ProRevenge subreddit. You can visit them at the links in the description below. Please go there and give them an upvote. Once again, this is Rob from Karma Comment Chameleon saying thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share it with your friends, and we'll see you in the next one.